Now, there was a bright spot in the report. The IMF slightly upgraded China's growth forecast to 6.5% this year, but it did warn that we could see some negative spillover effects as a result of a slowdown in China. Now, to talk more about China and the impact of slower growth in the country, I sat down with World Bank's Country Director of China, Bert Hofman. I started by asking Hofman what he thinks are some of the biggest challenges that are facing China this year.
Well, for China, there's external challenges, but there's also domestic challenges. The external environment is still not working that well. Global growth is only very moderate, and as a matter of fact, we anticipated back in January to have global growth at around 3% for this year. Now, looking at the numbers, we're actually thinking that it's going to come in a little bit lower. China, which exports a lot of goods to other countries, of course, feels the headwind from that. But we believe domestically the challenges are bigger. China is in the middle of this process of a big transformation to a more domestically oriented economy, moving away from manufacturing, especially from heavy manufacturing, towards more services and more productivity-driven growth. And that's a very difficult transition, as we've already seen.
The shift in China from a export-driven economy to a more domestic consumption-driven economy, surely that's having spillover effects across the region. What are the spillover effects?
Well, there's two big ones. The one is the slowdown in China is having its spillover effects. Clearly, it's still a very high growth in China relative to many other countries, and actually the contribution of China to the world economy hasn't reduced in absolute numbers. But nevertheless, there was a big anticipation maybe that China was going to grow with double-digit numbers forever. And so the slowdown comes a little bit as a surprise. And one consequence of that is the commodity prices. People had expected to have a higher demand for commodities than actually occurs. The commodity demand is still growing, but by less than previously expected. So a lot of supply is coming on stream now, and that actually gives a downward pressure on commodity prices.
They're going to hold steady at around 6.5% for a number of years, or are we going to gradually see a decline in that number?
China's ambition for the next 5 year, for the 5-year plan, the 13 5-year plan, is to have a minimum of 6.5% growth. And the significance of that is that 6.5% growth for the next 5 years would double China's income from 2010 to 2020. The government will try very hard to achieve that minimum of 6.5%. We believe that that is within range, but at the outer ranges. So we believe that a lot of reforms would need to happen so that on a sustainable basis, China can grow that rapidly. In the very long run, so beyond 2020, China will slow down further. Every country has, and every country that comes closer to being a rich country will slow down.
The Paris Climate Treaty is going to be signed at an event at the UN at the end of the month. US, India, China have all committed to signing the treaty. It's an ambitious plan. Are you optimistic that it's going to work?
First of all, we believe that Paris and the COP21 conference was very important for the world. And China made a tremendous contribution in taking the lead, if you want, with the US and a few other countries to really drive this to a success. China made strong commitments there, among others to cap its total emission by 2030. And that requires a lot of things for China to happen. Now, a lot of these things are actually already happening. I mean, yes, China is the largest emitter of CO2 in the world, but it's also already the largest producer of alternative energy, of renewable energies. We see that share of renewable energies grow over time. And China has a number of policy instruments that it is already using that will limit further CO2 emissions over time. So, and that will, of course, require quite a dramatic shift towards more renewables, but also what will happen is towards more energy-efficient production. And China has shown a very good record on that, actually.
The AIIB launched this year. It's received a lot of support from emerging economies around the world. The World Bank also supports this initiative, but the United States does not support AIIB. Do you think it's because, Bert, perhaps the U.S. is threatened that this China-led development bank could possibly undermine U.S. authority?
Well, look, first of all, we're very happy with the AIIB. We see enormous needs for infrastructure around the developing world, and particularly in Asia, and rapidly growing Asia. So an additional partner to help fill the infrastructure gap is very welcome. And that's the one reason that we have been helping the AIIB to get up and running, and they've done that in record time. So now they are up and running. And as a matter of fact, during the spring meetings here, we're going to sign a co-financing agreement, i.e. we're going to jointly finance projects across Asia. And so for us, it's a very good partner. Look, the United States, they have maybe some different views on what the contribution of AIIB would be, but I think we all share that view of the need for more infrastructure finance and how to exactly get there. That's of course up to each and every individual country. I think in the past there were some concerns from the United States and other countries on safeguard policies, on social safeguards, on environmental safeguards. Frankly, we've been working exactly on those points with the AIIB, and the standards that the AIIB will apply to their projects are very similar to the ones that we apply. So I think those concerns can be, if you want, can now be put to bed.